After the conclusion of the September 3rd general elections, the People's National Party suffered a massive defeat to the Jamaica Labour Party. They managed to only secure 14 seats to the Jamaica Labour Party's 49 seats. It should also be mentioned that in comparison to the elections of 2016, the People's National Party lost all of 15 constituencies which it had won in that specific election. The Jamaica Labour Party took those 15 constituencies in the 2020 elections. The People's National Party's defeat in the 2020 general elections means that Dr. Wickham McNeil, Peter Bunting, Dr. Fenton Ferguson, Dr. Dayton Campbell, Richard Azan, and Horace Daly are no longer in Parliament, and these are some well-known PNP affiliates, and of course they have always been seated in Parliament. Based on the numbers coming out of the 2020 general elections, let us assess the 15 constituencies that were lost by the People's National Party to the Jamaica Labour Party in the 2020 general elections. We will look at each of the 15 PNP candidates who lost their seats, and we will also do a comparison with the performance of the Jamaica Labour Party in terms of the number of votes that were accumulated both in 2020 and 2016. Let's take a look at Dr. Dayton Campbell's numbers. In 2016, he managed to garner all of 8,461 votes. However, in 2020, Dr. Dayton Campbell only received 5,783 votes. This is in comparison to the JLP, who got 8,051 votes in 2016 and ended up getting 7,821 votes in 2020, which led to them having won that seat from Dr. Dayton Campbell. For Peter Bunting, in 2016, he got 9,376 votes, in comparison to 7,112 votes in the 2020 general elections. This compares to the Jamaica Labour Party, who won 8,204 votes in the 2016 general elections, to a comparison of 8,097 votes after the conclusion of the 2020 general elections. For Dr. Wickham McNeil, he managed to secure 6,679 votes in 2016, in comparison to 5,069 votes in 2020. The JLP's candidate, however, managed to secure 5,186 votes in 2016 and 6,116 votes in 2020. Mr. Dwayne Vaz of the PNP managed to secure 9,978 votes in 2016, whilst in 2020 he managed to secure 7,200 votes. This compares to the Jamaica Labour Party's candidate, who in 2016 got 8,847 votes, in comparison to 2020, when that candidate got 8,428 votes. As the trend continues, you will realize that the Jamaica Labour Party continues to remain consistent with the number of votes that they would have received, whilst the PNP declined in the number of votes that they received from the Jamaican electorate in each respective constituency. Let's look at Luther Buchanan. He received 6,675 votes in the 2016 general elections, in comparison to 4,851 votes at the time. in 2020. Later, in 2016, the Jamaica Labour Party managed to get 3,802 votes in the 2016 elections. And for the 2020 general elections, the Jamaica Labour Party's candidate got 4,862 votes. They have increased the number of votes that they would have received. Later, for Colin Fagan of the PNP, in 2016, he received 7,553 votes, in comparison to 2020, when he got 5,735 votes. Now, this is a massive difference of 1,818 votes. Now, for the Jamaica Labour Party, they managed to garner 6,829 votes in 2020 in comparison to 7,025 votes in 2016. And whilst this was a decrease of 196 votes difference, they of course still managed to secure that constituency from Mr. Colin Fagan. For the constituency that is represented by Imani Duncan Price and formerly was represented by Ronald Thwaites in 2016, the PNP only garnered 5,190 votes after the conclusion of the 2016 general elections, and in 2020 they got a mere 4,147 votes, a major decline of 1,043 votes. This led to the JLP having gotten 4,623 votes in comparison to the 3,961 votes that the Jamaica Labour Party's candidate had received in 2016. For the constituencies that is held by Fenton Ferguson in 2016, he received 8,881 votes in comparison to 5,392 votes in 2020, and this led to a loss because the difference was 3,489 votes. For 2020, the Jamaica Labour Party managed to secure 6,126 votes in that constituency to take it from Dr. Fenton Ferguson, in comparison to the 7,220 votes that the Jamaica Labour Party had received in 2016. For the constituency which was held by Victor Wright, he, in 2016, had all of 9,611 votes, in comparison to the 2020 general elections, where he only received 6,771 votes. This compares to the Jamaica Labour Party, who got 9,162 votes in 2016 and had a massive amount of 8,508 votes. Assess another of the 15 constituencies that were lost by the People's National Party in the 2020 general elections. Mr. Ian Hales represented the People's National Party in 2016, and at that time, he managed to get 6,829 votes in comparison to the 4,987 votes that he got in 2020. The Jamaica Labour Party, on the other hand, managed to get 5,358 votes in 2016, but increased by 650 votes to get 6,008 votes in the 2020 general elections. For the constituency which was represented by Basil Waite and Evan Redman, the PNP got 7,733 votes in 2016, in comparison to 6,524 votes in 2020. It also happened that the Jamaica Labour Party got 6,209 votes in 2016, in comparison to 7,029 votes in 2020. That was an increase. For the constituency represented by the PNP's Michael Stewart, they got 8,398 votes in 2016 and had a decline to 5,916 votes in 2020, in comparison to the Jamaica Labour Party, who had gotten 7,222 votes in 2016 and managed to get 6,810 votes in 2020. Mr. Razan, at the time, managed to get 8,135 votes in 2016, and later in 2020, at the conclusion of the count, he got 6,009 votes, in comparison to the JLP's candidate, who got 7,191 votes in 2016, which compares to 6,124 votes which were received in 2020 after the conclusion of the general elections. The constituency represented by PNP, Oris Daly, won in 2016 with 7,049 votes, in comparison to 5,322 votes for 2020. This was a decline of 1,727 votes between 2016 and 2020. However, the Jamaica Labour Party did not miss a beat, and they went on to win the 2020 general elections for that specific seat by getting 6,032 votes in comparison to their 6,317 votes in 2016. The constituency that was represented by Dr. Walton Small in the 2020 general elections, in comparison to Dr. Derek Collier in 2016. The PNP got 4,278 votes in comparison to 5,275 votes in 2020, a decrease of 1,003 votes. Later, in comparison to Jamaica Labour Party, who managed to get 6,216 votes in 2016, increased the number of votes for that constituency by 1,007 votes to arrive at a total number of votes for 2020 of 7,223 votes. Assess the situation. Dr. Dayton Campbell, who represented Centre and Northwestern, managed to get 2,678 votes, lesser than he did in 2016. The JLP got 230 votes less in 2020 than they did in 2016. But the Jamaica Labour Party was still able to defeat Dr. Dayton Campbell in the Senan Northwestern constituency. The independent candidate Peter Shand received all of 763 votes. But if Shand's votes were added to the votes that were received by Mr. Campbell, it would not have been sufficient for him to overcome the Jamaica Labour Party's candidate. Dr. Dayton Campbell managed to lose his seat by all of 2,044 votes. For Mr. Peter Bunting, who was the candidate representing Manchester Central, and the person who challenged Dr. Peter Phillips for the leadership of the People's National Party in 2019. He only managed to receive 2,264 votes lesser than he did in 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party got 107 votes lesser in 2020 than in 2016, but they were still able to defeat Mr. Peter Bunting. The defeat of Mr. Peter Bunting by a relatively unknown Jamaica Labour Party candidate is a cause for concern within the People's National Party, as he had defeated much stronger opponents in previous elections. In 2016, Mr. Peter Bunting managed to clearly defeat Danville Walker of the Jamaica Labour Party. Constituency of Westmoreland Western, which was formerly represented by Dr. Wickham McNeil, who is a vice president of the People's National Party. The votes that were received includes a lesser amount of 1,610 votes for the People's National Party in 2020 in comparison to 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party, however, managed to collect all of 930 more votes in 2020 than they did in 2016, which led to a massive defeat for Dr. Wickham McNeil. The Jamaica Labour Party got votes from some of Dr. Wickham McNeill's traditional voters. That is what the assessment would present. Later, a similar situation was for Luther Buchanan of the People's National Party in eastern Westmoreland. The seat was taken over by Daniel Lawrence of the Jamaica Labour Party, who managed to securely win that seat after a magisterial recount. Of course, to give it some historical context, the eastern Westmoreland seat formerly belonged to the President of the People's National Party, former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson. That seat was handed over to Luther Buchanan. However, he managed to receive 1,824 votes, lesser than he did in 2016, in comparison to 2020. The Jamaica Labour Party, however, gained 1,060 more votes in 2020 than they did in 2016. And this meant that the Jamaica Labour Party would have gotten more votes and would have taken some of the PNP votes from their traditional voters as well. This seat was so tightly contested that it was the subject of a magisterial recount because both candidates had tied after the official recount. After the conclusion of that magisterial recount, the Jamaica Labour Party was officially declared the winner of that seat in Westmoreland Eastern. Let us assess a few other seats that were taken by the Jamaica Labour Party. Constituency of Westmoreland Central, Dwayne Vaz took over the seat from Roger Clark. However, he got 2,778 votes, lesser than he did in 2020. In comparison to 2016, the Jamaica Labour Party defeated him for the seat in 2020. They got 419 votes lesser than they did in 2016. However, they still managed to defeat Mr. Vaz. McNeill, Buchanan and Vaz also suffered defeats, and this meant that the Jamaica Labour Party controls all of the seats in Westmoreland. This is the first time, so this is an historical achievement for the Jamaica Labour Party, since they changed the leadership from Edward Siaga to Mr. Golding. However, the JLP had won all of the constituencies in that parish previously as well. Colin Fagan over in St. Catherine South East got 1,818 votes lesser in 2020, and the Jamaica Labour Party got 126 votes lesser than in 2020 in comparison to 2016. In Central Kingston, which was previously held by Ronald Thwaites, and with Imani Duncan Price taking over the candidacy for that constituency, the PNP got 1,043 votes lesser than they did in 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party managed to gain all of 662 more votes in 2020. And that Kingston Central constituency was the constituency of former Prime Minister Michael Manley. And this was formerly a stronghold of the People's National Party, but still, the Jamaica Labour Party has managed to take all of these constituencies from the PNP. And this proves that they are a force to be reckoned with the Jamaican electorate. For Fenton Ferguson, over in St. Thomas Eastern, where he had previously won that constituency 6 times, he managed to experience a massive defeat by 3,489 votes. And this was the amount that he managed to decrease by in 2020. The Jamaica Labour Party had a reduction as well. But the defeat of Dr. Fenton Ferguson means that the parish of St. Thomas is back in the hands of the Jamaica Labour Party for the first time since 1980. Victor Wright in North Trelawney got 2,840 votes lesser in 2020 than in 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party had a decline in votes as well, but they also managed to secure the North Trelawney seat by taking it from Victor Wright. This seat was previously held by Desmond Leckie. And the Jamaica Labour Party has taken this seat and shown that they are a dominant force in Trelawney as well. The constituency in Western Hanover that was held by Ian Hales, he managed to reduce in the number of votes received by 1,842. Therefore, the Jamaica Labour Party managed to take that seat from him because they gained 650 more votes in 2020. Evan Redman, over in St. Elizabeth North East, lost his seat to the Jamaica Labour Party as well, as he was replaced by Basil Waite as the PNP candidate. But nonetheless, Waite got a decline in votes of 1,209 in comparison to Mr. Redman, who got more in 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party increased its 2020 numbers by 820 votes. Their candidate, Delroy Slowly, moved from being a supporter of the PNP to that of being an independent candidate, and he became a successful Jamaica Labour Party candidate in St. Elizabeth North East. It should also be noted that Michael Stewart in Manchester Southern, who took over his seat from Michael Peart of the PNP, had garnered 2,482 votes lesser than he did in 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party also saw a decline, but they managed to take that seat from Michael Stewart and won the Manchester Southern seat for the 2020 general elections. And for Mr. Azan in Northwest Clarendon, he got a decline of 2,126 votes. The Jamaica Labour Party had a decline as well by 1,067, but they still managed to take that constituency from Richard Azan, and this was confirmed after the conclusion of the magisterial recount, with Mr. Enriquez taking that seat for the Jamaica Labour Party. Mr. Horace Daly in Clarendon Northern, who is also the deputy chairman of the People's National Party, managed to receive 1,727 lesser votes than he did in 2016. And of course, the Jamaica Labour Party's candidate swooped in and took that seat from him as well. In Southern St. James, Derek Kellier, who held the constituency for years, which was now represented by Dr. Walton Small, received 1,003 votes lesser in 2020 than in 2016. The Jamaica Labour Party got an increase in its numbers over in South St. James and won that seat with an increase of 1,007 votes. So it does seem that some of those die-hearted PNP voters would have given their support to the Jamaica Labour Party. Clear is that for the 2020 general election results, all of these 15 PNP candidates had a significant decline in the number of votes in 2020 in comparison to what they received in 2016. It should also be noted that each of these PNP candidates from these 15 constituencies should be doing definite and clear assessments to understand the reasons behind the decline in the number of voters and votes that they received in 2020. Of course, some major persons have been removed, and this shows the JLP's dominance. 9 of the Jamaica Labour Party's candidates got fewer votes in 2020 than in 2016, but they still managed to safely defeat their respective PNP candidates. And they took some formerly stronghold PNP constituencies. Of the 6 JLP candidates, however, who got more votes in 2020 than in 2016, the margin that they got was significant, and of course they still were able to safely defeat their opponents. Of the 9 of the Jamaica Labour Party candidates who won fewer votes in 2020 than in 2016, one of them, the to secure a margin that was greater than the fall off for the People's National Party. The other 5 managed to get margins that were lesser than the decline for the People's National Party. So therefore, based on these statistics, it can be safely concluded that the People's National Party lost the majority of the 15 seats that were known to be safe seats for them. And as it stands, the Jamaica Labour Party has gone into each parish and each constituency and taken control and has shown that they are dominant and have basically wrestled each constituency from the People's National Party, whether it was a safe seat or a stronghold or whether it was a closely contested seat. The Jamaica Labour Party displayed their dominance in the 2020 general elections, and there can be no doubt about it because the numbers have shown that the Jamaica Labour Party is the party of choice for the Jamaican electorate, and they won by all of 49 seats to the People's National Party's 14 after the conclusion of the general elections on September 3rd. And this was cemented again after the conclusion of at least 3 magisterial recounts, where the Jamaica Labour Party won 2 of those magisterial recounts in comparison to the People's National Party, who only took 1. The seat that was marginally won by Lisa Hanna in Senan. Now, of course, leave your comments down below and let me know what you think about the assessment of the dominance shown by the Jamaica Labour Party in comparison to the tragic decline of the People's National Party in even those constituencies that were considered to be safe for them. Now, thanks for watching and remember to subscribe.